Hello and welcome to this third session of our female coaching series. The Women and Girls Task Force is incredibly excited for these monthly sessions, and we're so happy that you all are able to join us tonight. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Kirsty Mason, and I'm the community coaching lead at Canadian Sports Centre Atlantic, but I'm also a ringette coach, athlete, board member, and like all of you, a female leader. I'm so honored to be part of the Women and Girls Task Force and the MC for tonight's session and of these coaching series, where we learn from a variety of influential presenters over the coming months. So in addition to the Canadian Sports Centre Atlantic, I would like to thank the following partners who have helped shape this extraordinary event. So as seen on the screen, Sport Nova Scotia, Support for Sport, Nova Scotia Gaming, and the Government of Nova Scotia Communities, Cultures and Heritage. On behalf of the Women and Girls Task Force and our partners, I would like to acknowledge that our offices are located in Mi'kma'ki, the ancestral and unceded territory of the Mi'kmaq people. And we are aware that there are people and participants joining from all over Turtle Island, and we welcome you to share in the chat box where you currently reside if outside of Mi'kma'ki. Before we get started, we do have a couple of housekeeping items to go through. So for the duration of the panel, we please ask that you turn off your camera and mute yourself to reduce background noise and feedback. We ask that, as mentioned earlier, that you change your username to your full name or your NCCP number so we can ensure you get credit in the locker. We ask that we suggest that you change your Zoom viewing to speaker view. So in the top right corner, you can change it from gallery view to speaker view, and that way you can see the people who are speaking. And then if you have any questions throughout the session, please direct those to the chat box. And if you want to submit anything anonymously, or if you're having any technical difficulties, just simply send those questions to Janice, and her name is host Janice Kugel. So reach out to her with any anonymous questions or technical difficulties. And the last thing brings me to our next slide. We ask that you please actively participate in all polls. So tonight we're looking to know, where are you joining us from and what is your role in sport? So we'll give you another 30 seconds or so to answer that. And I don't think I can see the results. So maybe Janice, you can read them aloud.
Absolutely. So we've got a pretty close tie. So most people are joining us from either Central Region or Valley today. And we have one person from outside of Nova Scotia joining us this evening. So welcome. We'd love it if you drop it in where you're joining us from, or what other Atlantic province. And tonight, no surprise here, we've got 74% of the folks on the call tonight are coaches, followed closely by 61% athletes. So welcome.
Awesome. Yeah, it makes sense on the athlete to coach transition session. So it's great to see so many athletes and coaches online. So our next interactive slide will ask that you use the annotate function. So for those who have never used annotate function before, it's part of Zoom. You go to the top and you may have to press the 3 dots where you have more options and click annotate. And then that way you'll be able to type, draw, whatever you'd like. And we'd like for you to explain why you got started in coaching and maybe who got you involved in coaching.
So yeah, for some of you that also may be under view options up at the top with a little arrow. And the easiest one is just to click on the text box, and the text box will actually pop up just like a regular text box, and you should be able to click right into it. Perfect. I see some people have got it.
So I'll give you a couple minutes to write your answers. so far we're singing To Give Back to My Club. My coaches got me involved. This person's phys ed teacher got them involved, so they were in grade 12 coaching grade 10 boys. The team didn't have a coach. Someone said a player that I was coaching with needed help with her team and asked me to join. Played sports all my life, hope to share some of my experiences to help others, wanted to give back to the sport, wanted to become a better athlete and teach the ones coming up behind me. To volunteer, give back. Yeah, that's a common answer for sure. A parent coach asked for help. A teammate asked to help or for help. To be a part of the community. Yeah, it's great. I'm getting a bit of overlap, so I'm having a hard time reading it, but it seems like a lot of people got started because someone else asked them for help, so it's great to see.
Kirsty, as you're sharing your screen, you can actually use the mouse and move some of those over.
Oh, okay. Thanks. Oh.
Never mind.
Okay. Okay, great. These are great answers though. And I'll see if I can clear the annotation. Yeah, I'm not seeing that there. So maybe Janice, you can do that for me. There we go. All right. Well, thank you everyone for sharing why you got started coaching. Now we're going to hear a little bit about our three panelists tonight and how they started coaching. So the first panelist I'd like to introduce is Emma Delory. So Emma started playing rugby in high school at Halifax West and continued as a varsity athlete at Acadia University from 2010 to 2015. Although Emma is now working full-time in rugby as a development officer for Rugby Nova Scotia and head coach for the St. Mary's University Huskies, her coaching career actually started in the sport of figure skating with the Bedford Skating Club. She began coaching in rugby with her club's mini rugby program, but quickly moved into assisting with high school rugby and eventually the provincial programming. Emma credits her success in her role to her passion for the people in the sport and to her love of learning. Our second panelist is Lisa Ross. Lisa is a sailor from Lunenburg, Nova Scotia, who has competed in 2 Pan Am Games in addition to the 2004 and 2008 Summer Olympics. Lisa has 26 years of experience coaching at different levels, from club programs to the Olympic Games. Last year, Lisa was hired as the Canadian Sailing Development Squad, CSDS, and Talent ID coach, which focuses on developing, monitoring, and implementing programs for members of the CSDS and the Sail Canada Talent ID program across Canada. Lisa is also a mom of 2 wonderful kids. Last but not least is our third panelist, Savanah Newton. So originally from Sackville, Nova Scotia, Savanah was a member of the Boston University Terriers NCAA Division I women's hockey team for 4 years, as well as a 4-year member of the Team Canada National Development Program. During her time as a former professional hockey player in Sweden, she held the position of head of hockey development and coach for Prolympia Private School in Sweden. Savanah is currently the assistant coach of Dalhousie women's hockey team and the high performance female coach at Hockey Nova Scotia, which involves recruiting and developing female coaching staff for the U16 and U18 provincial, along with leading a female coaching professional development series and an athlete enhancement program for female leaders. So we're really excited to have such three talented former athletes and now awesome coaches doing great things in Nova Scotia and throughout Canada. So I encourage you all to give a big virtual round of applause for our 3 panelists tonight. And our first question will be to learn a little bit more about them. So Emma, maybe you can kick it off and share with us how you got involved in coaching and what you're currently doing now.
Yeah. So first of all, thank you, Kirsty and Janice, for hosting these awesome events. It's really exciting to get to be on calls with so many females in sport that I've never met before. So that's a really exciting thing for me. And also it's awesome to be here with Savanah and Lisa, who are amazing in their own sports. So that's really exciting for me too. Yeah, I guess The best way to describe what I'm currently doing in sport is by using like the hat analogy. So I've got my Rugby Nova Scotia hat on, and that's probably the biggest role that I have right now. So I'm the development officer with Rugby Nova Scotia, which means I have the opportunity to go around the province and try and develop the sport, whether it's through youth activity, club activity, provincial activity, coaches, referees, you name it. If it's got a development aspect, I'm generally involved in it somehow. And then, like you mentioned before, Kirsty, I recently, this past year, stepped into the head coach role at the St. Mary's women's program. And unfortunately, we didn't get a season, but I'm excited to go for it in 2021 in the fall. And then my last hat is also the manager for the senior women's national team. So two kind of coaching hats and one manager hat. So when you put the poll up there earlier, I was like, yeah, athlete and coach and other and staff. So I'm sure there's a lot of people on the call who have that same kind of feeling where they had to click multiple things. It happens often in sport. Yeah, so I guess you kind of also mentioned how I got my start in sport already. So I did start in figure skating. That was my first love. And my club was really good about getting their athletes involved as can skate coaches from an early age. It was something that was almost like expected for everybody to try. And it's not that they like made you stay in it, but everybody would give a little bit back to the club, and you got this like vest. I'm sorry if there's any figure skaters on that remember these vests. They were hideous, but they had the logo on the chest, and it was something that I was really proud to wear. And you only got that if you were a can skate coach. So that was like a huge win for me to be able to wear that during my session. And then I kind of retired from figure skating in grade 11, and my friends were like, come play rugby. You're not doing anything else anymore. So I did. I loved it. And I had already been coaching in figure skating. So for me, as soon as I started really understanding the sport a little bit more, it was a really natural role for me to fill in the world of rugby.
Awesome. Thanks, Emma. And I always find it so interesting how you made the switch from what people would probably consider like a delicate or sport to a rougher sport like rugby. And it's so awesome that, you know, your coaching skills do transition from one sport to another. Mm-hmm. So thanks for sharing. Lisa, do you want to share next how you got involved in coaching and then what you're currently doing?
Sure. Hi, everybody. Just like Emma, I'd like to, thank this Canadian Sports North Atlantic and Sport Nova Scotia for continuing to, help all of our female leaders gain new skills, and to the panelists for sharing your stories. I'm excited to be a part of it. So I started coaching as soon as I graduated from youth sailing, and that was kind of the path that everybody went at my yacht club, Lunenburg Yacht Club. But I was still competing, so most of my and I think maybe some of the current athletes will find this interesting, is that most of my coaching time has been while I was competing. So my first few years of just being a club coach at the community level, I was still a competing athlete, and I actually competed at a Pan Am Games while I was coaching as a youth athlete. And I basically just worked with my yacht club to make that happen. I went to university and I actually played rugby. So, I've got a little bit of skill. And I stopped competing in sailing when I went to university. I played rugby for UBC, which is where I went, but coaching was my job that I did every summer. So it kept me involved with the sport that was kind of my number one sport. Sorry, rugby. And so I actually coached almost wholly for 5 years, and I learned a lot. And that's kind of how I saw that coaching might be something that, I could do long-term, because I had a lot more time while I was at university to be involved with coaching. And then I graduated from university, and then I started competing again in sailing full time. But I went back to coaching after my first Olympics. Olympics, and a lot of young athletes out there, it's an expensive thing. So I needed to make some money in between. And so I went back to coaching, and I actually moved back to Nova Scotia at that point and started coaching for the provincial team. And that was where I was really able to get my teeth into some like really good programming, bringing up some young athletes, and I got excited about coaching at that point. I was still competing myself, so I was able to manage working with the province and they're having their support to allow me to reach my goals while while they were able to help me support the programs that were being developed at that time. And then when I finished my competitive career, I went back into full-time coaching, and I didn't think it was going to be a career move for me. I really didn't know what I wanted to do at that point. But I really enjoy it. And so I've kept on and kept on, and I've had some great support from the PSO and the Sports Center Atlantic to be able to move into a national role here while staying in my home province, which has been really great. And we'll get into a little bit more of that later. But yeah, so now I work for the national body. My role is national development coach and talent ID coach. But the majority of my time is actually spent with our men's senior laser team and preparing them for the next games. So that's kind of my number one role on the team. And it's probably a unique role for a female coach to be coaching the men's team, but I enjoy it. And then I also do some development with our national youth squad and some coach development and that kind of stuff through the national team. I'm currently on mat leave, and so I've got 2 kids, and one of them is 6 months old last week. So Miles is growing like a weed.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing, Lisa. And it's so cool that, as a female coach, you're breaking barriers and coaching the males. And I know we had Corey Chevry on here a couple months ago as well, who's also a female coach in a male environment. So it's cool to see that and see Nova Scotian coaches doing that. Also, I know you mentioned a little bit about still being an athlete while coaching, and we're going to be talking more about that as well. So interested to hear more about that. Savannah, how did you get involved in coaching? I know you just stopped your professional career like a year ago. So how did you get involved, and what's your current scenario?
So thank you, Kirsty. So I just wanted to thank Janice and Kirsty for hosting this. It's a great opportunity to speak and learn from some other coaches. I'm really excited to be here with you, Emma and Lisa. Just a little icebreaker before we get started. I actually went to rugby tryouts in high school, and I stayed for the first 30 minutes of the tryout, and I decided that it was too rough for me, and I left, which is kind of ironic given that I play hockey, but I figure I took a little bit to think about why I didn't like it. And I think it's because in hockey, we're fully protected with all the gear on, and in rugby, you're left to the wolves. So definitely respect for that sport. It was not for me. But just a little funny story to get started. But yes, like Kirsty said, I literally just finished playing last March. So this is my first year in a coaching role where it's not, it is a consistent season, and it's not just hockey camps. I did countless hockey camps growing up. That's how I got into coaching. It was just a natural environment for me. All of my friends were doing it. All of my teammates, we just thought it was fun. So it was an amazing opportunity to anytime a coach of mine needed somebody to come out, we would always volunteer and spend our time at the rink, because that's just what we love to do. So it was an amazing opportunity to give back. So yeah, so that's how I got involved. Every summer I would come home and do that. I was fortunate at I went to Boston University, and they had a Boston University summer camp. So they would always give us the opportunity to come to Boston and work the camp every summer. So just little opportunities. I feel like I'm very grateful that my past coaches and people involved in the sport of hockey have always been really good about trying to put forward opportunities for us to learn and develop into a coach. I think there's definitely still more room for that. And that's kind of where I come in with my new role with Hockey Nova Scotia and Sports Center Atlantic, is to try to identify ways that we can develop and create opportunities for women in hockey to have access to the resources to know how to do it. So it's amazing to be on a panel like this tonight, because that's what the discussion is based around. It's an amazing opportunity for athletes to get involved in coaching. And I think we've seen a little bit of it, but I think we can see a lot more of it. And I think a lot of it just comes down to athletes not really knowing that they have that opportunity or really fully understanding it. But yeah, so thank you, Janice and Kirsty, for hosting this and kicking off the discussion. Yeah, that's just a little bit about my background. And then to just finish off, I'm currently coaching with Hockey Nova Scotia, and I'm coaching with Dalhousie University. I'm very grateful that an opportunity opened up at Dalhousie as well to become an assistant coach there. So definitely a learning curve being with a university team right off the bat, but I'm absolutely loving it, and the girls are great. So that makes it easy.
Awesome. Thanks, Savanah. I also got started in a similar way, like through camps, and then getting kind of thrown into a coaching of team full time. But it comes natural once you are in those environments for so many summers as camps, and then as an athlete as well. So I definitely relate to what you were saying. For the next question, we'll kick it off with Lisa. So it is known that success as an athlete does not always automatically translate to success as a coach. So what barriers did you face when transitioning from an athlete to a coach, and how did you overcome them?
For me, because I was coaching almost all the way through my athletic career, didn't really feel like I was transitioning. I guess my big transition moment was when I actually retired from being an athlete. And I think for all athletes, and I know that there's a number of them on the call, transitioning, especially as you get up into kind of the higher high performance end of athletics, that retirement is a very tricky time. And it's not something to, I think, take lightly, but it's also something to understand that every athlete finds that time tricky. So for me, coaching was kind of like my soft landing place, because I enjoyed coaching the whole way through my athletic career. My mom's a teacher. I enjoy teaching. And so, I really like that part of sharing knowledge and discovering things with athletes. And so it ended up being my soft landing place. And then I got support to keep going. And it also is one of those things where I realized that that it allowed me to still have a lot of the things that I loved as being an athlete within a coach. So the goal setting and the, that competitiveness, I still have the same, that the same things are within my coaching career, which really lines up nicely with, what I felt I was good at, but also, what I wanted out of the athletic career. So I think that's kind of why I ended up there. And as far as barriers, I think one of the big things for me at the beginning was I came from being an Olympic athlete, wanting to be a national team coach, but I also wanted to live in Nova Scotia. And I also, my values are definitely here, my family's here, and this is where I wanted to be. And it didn't necessarily lead to me jumping right in and being a national team coach. And, so I think one of the big things was, and I think it was good for me as a coach as well, because I had to start as a provincial coach, building programs and, and learning kind of from the ground up. And I think, as you grow in anything that you do, you think you know it all at the beginning, and then you realize you don't know anything. And so I'm really happy that I ended up going through that transition of being a provincial coach, learning with younger athletes, and then moving on to being able to coach at the Olympics and coach the national senior team. So I think one of the barriers for me was just kind of waiting and waiting for the opportunity to present itself to be able to kind of move on and do what I wanted to do. But I think it was definitely worth it. And I think that's, for a lot of coaches, that's something that, it's not like there's a job on Kijiji that you can just go to another, business and marketing, or, you've got to kind of work and try and create opportunities for yourself and really use your network and use the support network. And here in Nova Scotia, we have a huge support network for our coaches and our athletes. And so, things do happen, and you just got to keep working and keep pushing. And I think holding your values really, really close to yourself, so that, whether they're family, whether they're, your work-life balance, all of those things, make sure that you're really true to yourself and what you want to create for yourself and what you want to do. And just keep working at it.
Great. Yeah. Thank you so much, Lisa, for sharing. And Savanah, maybe I'll throw it to you next. So I know like it's been mentioned, like you're just transitioning. So like what barriers have you been facing over the past year as you transition to a coach?
Yeah, over the past year, has been really eye-opening for me. Just like I said, I've done a lot of coaching, but I haven't necessarily been consistently involved with a team for an entire year. So there's been a little bit of a learning curve. I've been a couple, like a lot of eye-opening information has come my way, and it's honestly just such a different perspective being on the other side of the game. And I love it. There's so many opportunities to learn. Yeah, I think I would think of it more as opportunities to learn than barriers, but I've learned so much over this past year, just more about what goes into making a team run, and all the things that you take for granted when you're an athlete. You have no idea how, you just assume things are ready for you. Like you have transportation, you have your ice times booked, like everything, or your field time, whatever sport it is. But you just kind of assume that those things are done and taken care of. And then when you're a coach, it's not enough to have all the right answers or think you have all the right answers on the ice or on the field or on the track. There's so many different components that go into it that is all part of the coaching experience. So that's really what's going on with me right now, is just learning how to throw myself into these different situations that are uncomfortable, but they're necessary to grow and to take on a new role and to transition. That's the biggest thing, is just you're not always going to know what you're doing, but you just have to do it and you learn from it. And I think athletes often, as long as you're open and honest with your intentions, are really good about understanding your situation. Like I know that the Dalhousie girls know that I haven't been with another team coaching consistently. So they're just like, I don't expect them to come to practice and never make a mistake. I trust that they know that I don't always have the right answers, or I'm not going to be flawless in my execution of everything. But yeah, I think the mental barrier of just getting past that, and realizing there's lots of opportunity to learn. For me, it was more a mental barrier, and a learning curve. But we're working on it. Yeah, that would be my barrier to entry.
Awesome. Yeah. Thank you for sharing. And I think a lot of female coaches can relate to that. And even like the whole imposter system or symptom, what's that called? Yeah. Where you feel like you don't belong or you feel like you're not good enough, but going into those uncomfortable situations and you're going to learn from it and you're going to grow. And I like what you said about like, we don't expect our athletes to not make mistakes. So it's okay if we do too. Yeah, I love that. Thanks, Savanah. And Emma, is there anything you'd like to add? What barriers have you faced while transitioning to a coach?
Yeah, I'll give you my like 2 bullet point answers and then maybe elaborate on each of them. So one of the big ones for me is time. That was a huge barrier when I first started out, and I'll explain. Time is always a barrier for me, it seems. And the second one was probably like my age and people's perception of me when I first started coaching. So just in terms of time, similar to Savanah and Lisa, I was an athlete when I was first started coaching, and I loved both worlds. So to be able to schedule myself so that I could still go to all of my club practices, all of my university practices, all of my provincial practices, and on top of that, do coaching was a barrier. So sometimes I had to prioritize which one I wanted to do. And there were times when I first started out that playing won out. And there were times as I moved more into my coaching role, I started really enjoying it a lot. And then that was when the coaching kind of went out. So time, I guess, for me is a big one. And I do want to say that like it's very possible to do both. You can coach and you can play high level at the same time. It's just you have to be very good at organizing and scheduling yourself because you need time for yourself as well. And that's important too. And then maybe the second piece is I came right out of university and then started coaching a provincial team that had never been was not running for probably about 10 years. So the U16s kind of like took a break with Rugby Nova Scotia, was off for a while, and then I brought it back when I first started coaching with them. And I remember like the first parents meeting that I had with all of these kids and all of these parents sitting in front of me. And I was new to coaching and a young female coach. And I was like, are they even going to believe that I'm the coach? Like, are they going to believe that I'm actually good enough to coach their kids in this sport that like has a high safety factor in it? And, I'm really thankful for the parents that have been involved in the Celtics programs over the past couple of years because they're amazing and they totally put their trust in me, which has been really nice. But that was something that I had as a mental barrier myself, was like I'm shorter than half of the kids on these team. Like I don't know how they're going to think I'm a leader. So just kind of like finding my role in that as a really young coach was a bit of a barrier for me at the start. And you grow into it and you learn who you are as a coach. And it definitely gets easier as you go. But that was something that I had to get over at the start. That was more difficult than I thought it would be. Yeah.
Great. Thanks, Emma. Yeah, I can definitely relate to both of those. And I was 20 when I first started coaching my first team, and it was a U19 team. And I felt the same way. I was like, I was you guys 2 years ago, and other coaches would go and talk to the dad parents that were standing in the hallways because they didn't know I was a coach. And but it does come down, like you say, parents are awesome. I know Lisa touched on like having that awesome Nova Scotia community, and I think it exists in all Nova Scotian sports. Is we're there for each other, and we have places like the Women and Girls Task Force and to support each other. So definitely lean on each other and rely on your friendships to get you through those times. Savanah, I'll throw it over to you next for our next question. So as we've mentioned a few times, like many athletes, they don't get involved in coaching until they're done with their competitive career. I know some of you guys got started like while coaching and playing, but didn't really fully get into it until you were done. So do you have any advice on how we can maybe get more athletes involved in coaching earlier?
Yeah, I would say that getting involved in coaching early is really rewarding, just because I always think about some of the camps that I worked when I was younger. I did it with a bunch of friends and it was amazing. It's the best feeling to witness a young girl have that aha moment where she learned something and she finally gets it. You guys have been working on it for weeks, and for some reason she's not getting it, and then all of a sudden she knows what she's doing, and she'll remember that feeling and remember that moving forward. So I just think that it's so rewarding to be involved, and why wouldn't you want to from an early age? My advice would be to do it with friends. I guess hockey and rugby and sports alike are kind of easy to do that because it is a team sport. So there's lots of people around. But even in individual sports, there's always, like, you always have teammates that can get involved, like run a clinic or a lesson, or take any opportunity just that comes your way, because I think that there is opportunities, just often we're a little bit nervous to take them because we think of it as such a cut, like we have a coach and then we have an athlete. But I think what hopefully some people will learn tonight, and maybe you knew already, but just need someone else to say it, is that it doesn't always have to be black and white. Like we can do both. So yeah, so just take advantage of the opportunities that come your way. Say yes a little bit more often, and even if it's scary or you think that like you don't belong, you shouldn't be doing it, you should be doing it, because everyone starts there, and there's never going to be a good time in life to do anything really unless you're willing to take a chance. Yeah, so my advice, do it with some friends, start a camp, start coaching the young ones, get involved, volunteer on the ice, to, if you have to volunteer on the field, volunteer to run a tennis lesson, volunteer to watch a coach run a tennis lesson, whatever it is in your sport, just try to be around. Like I know that I love going out when other coaches ask me to come out and help them run a session. I find it rewarding to help the kids out on the ice, but I also find it rewarding to be in the environment to watch the other coach teach as well, because you can always take little things away from just putting yourself in an environment to learn. So yeah, my advice would be to take opportunities when they come your way and try to do it in a way that's enjoyable. It doesn't have to be scary. Yeah.
I totally agree. Thanks, Savanah. And even like if those opportunities don't come your way, go find them. Like whenever a previous athlete or like a former athlete comes to me and says they want to help out, I'm like, yeah, I'll find you a spot. And I know any other female coach will feel the same way. We want as many female coaches as we can in our sports. So seek those opportunities. They'll open you, or they'll welcome you with open arms. Emma, do you have anything to add to that? Do you have any advice on how to get athletes involved in coaching earlier?
Yeah, kind of a bit like what Savanah had said. This is a secret for all of the athletes on the call. Coaches love when guest coaches come in and take over a session for them, even if it's something like really simple, like you're going to do one game with them or you're going to do 20 minutes with the kids or the athletes, because it's a different voice for the athletes. It's someone new, bright and shiny. So if you can be that person, if you're a little bit older, if you're a high school person and you'd like to go help the youth, or if you're in university, you could go help a high school or something, that guest coaching piece is a really good way to just get your foot into the door with coaching and give it like a test to see if you like it or not. And if you don't, then no harm, you tried. And what else can we ask for? And then I think if you do get interested in it, the biggest thing to next kind of take a look at would be like the hows of coaching. So really take a look at some of the coaches that you admire and try and pick out like how they're coaching instead of what they're coaching, because those are the really interesting things. You can go into any sport then, even if it's a sport that you're not playing, and have a look at the coach and how they interact with their players. So those are two really good ways, I think, that you can start to get involved with coaching if you haven't before. Yeah.
Awesome. Thanks, Emma. And again, for like coaches that are on the call, invite your former athletes to come out. Like I love, like you said, Emma, I love when people take over, and especially when like this year, some of the athletes are a bit unmotivated. It definitely helps to shake it up and bring maybe like this, shiny star or someone, Savanah just finished playing professional hockey. So I'm sure teams love bringing her in. So like, don't be afraid to reach out to those other athletes that they probably want to start getting coaching. So yeah, reach out to them. Lisa, so I know you've mentioned like you were coaching and an athlete at the same time. So do you have any advice on how other athletes could maybe follow your footsteps and do both and manage both?
Well, I think the one thing I'd say to all the athletes on the call is that I challenge you to definitely coach while you're being an athlete, because it makes you a better athlete. Like hands down, bar none, coaching really brings you back down to the basics, and it shows any gaps that you have in the basics. So, in order to teach somebody, you've got to know it. You've got to know the technicality of it in order to be able to teach that. And so it's really good to work with another coach and to have that experience of learning how to coach. And in learning how to coach, you're going to be learning how to be a better athlete. So I think it's really valuable. So I think it's something that you should really try and do as part of your actual work as an athlete. And it makes you kind of come up with your own philosophies, and maybe come up with some different techniques or things. So it is a really, really good exercise as an athlete. I think one of the big things is, if you are coaching as an athlete, really make sure that you ask for help. Make sure that you ask your club, especially, can I do guest coaching? Can I do volunteer coaching? Make sure that if you are coaching or you're thinking about it, don't think that, well, I can't coach that team and be an athlete. Ask the question, because you may be surprised at the answer that you get. Well, oh, we're going to split this between two coaches because we really value you and we want you involved. So if you don't ask, you're not gonna come up with a solution. But again, a sport and coaching, it doesn't necessarily have to work the same way for everybody. So you can make it your own, especially if you're interested and you really and you want to do it. And it is a valuable thing to do while you're actually being an athlete. You've got to have that balance, and you want to make sure that you're still meeting all your goals. And but it is something that you definitely can do. I think also, to get involved, sometimes barriers are like, I just don't know what it's going to be like. Take your NCCB level 1. Make sure that you go out and you get some coaching education, because that may kind of that may take a little bit of the scary away, because now you have some experience, you have some education, and in a lot of our sports, it's fairly easy to be able to take that without any prior coaching experience. So you can go out, do that. Some coaches have, some sports have community coaching levels, so you don't even need to go to your full NCCP to just get a little bit of a taste of coaching education. And then there's lots of stuff from Sport Nova Scotia and from the Sports Atlantic on coaching education. So you can do that kind of thing even before you coach. And the other thing I would say is, ask your coaches about reading about coaches. So even before you go out and coach, you can read a book by Nick Nurse, or read a book by, one of my favorite books is, now I can't remember the name of it. The tennis book, The Inner Art of Tennis. It's not really a coaching book, but it's a book about skill development and the inner game of tennis. There you go. And it's a book about skill development. So those are the kind of things that can kind of get you in that coaching mode before you kind of get out there and start coaching. But I think, the biggest thing would be to go and ask your club if, even if you can have like a part-time summer job, or, whatever it could be. And like the other panelists have said, coaches love guest coaches, because a lot of times we end up, oh yeah, here, I just got handed the Inner Game of Tennis. Love this book. And coaches love guest coaches a lot of times, because athletes sometimes just need to have that different way of hearing something. It's the same message, but it's said in like slightly different voice or slightly different way of saying it, and then they get it. And and so me as a coach, I love to have my athletes work with a whole bunch of different professionals and all kinds of different people, to be able to get those moments so that they can have a better package of skills. So so don't be afraid to coach up too. Like a lot of the panelists are saying about, the first time you coached, and you're coaching somebody who's like very close to your skill set or your age group. But the thing is, everybody can learn from everybody. And so, I mean, a lot of Olympians have coaches that have never been Olympians. And it's because, you can show somebody something from outside of what they're doing, just as, even though you might not be able to do it yourself. So don't cut yourself short, by what you think, you might not be able to give, because you'll probably surprise yourself. So.
Awesome. Thanks, Lisa. I totally agree with everything you said, and especially how coaching helps you as an athlete, and just on your points of education, like this is a great start for anyone who this might be like your first coaching session or PD session. And actually right now, like if you're a Nova Scotian coach, Coach Nova Scotia is offering their multi-sport courses for free, which is like huge and will save you hundreds of dollars. So now's a great time to get started on your education. And then there's a lot of other professional development like this, and I'm actually going to talk a bit about it at the end. So definitely stick around to learn more about that. But great points, Lisa. Thank you. Emma, we'll throw it back to you for the last question, and then if there's any questions from the participants, please put it in the chat box. I think I've received a couple so far, but we'll just ask this last question, and then we'll ask participants. So Emma, as someone who has transitioned from athlete to coach, what is the biggest piece of advice you have received that has helped you do so? And what piece of advice do you have for all the women on the call tonight?
I guess the biggest piece of advice that I received was to go and talk to people and find a mentor in my sport and out of my sport as well. Just like, honestly, it's someone to go to when you have a bit of an issue or when you don't know what you're doing. And just like somebody who you trust. It could be your coach, or maybe it's somebody completely out of the sporting world, but just somebody that you can go to with those problems, because often I have found that I don't want to put coaching in a negative light at all, but sometimes you feel lonely as a coach, even if you're coaching in a team. So creating those people around you, I think, has been like the biggest piece of advice that I've been given. And I am working to do that, and continuing to expand my circle as much as I can. So anybody on the call, feel free to follow me on Instagram and we can be friends. And I definitely want to echo Lisa with the education piece. I think that's huge. And if you do not like reading, like I like reading too, I am currently reading this book, Creating a Season to Remember. But if you don't like reading, like there are lots of other ways that you can learn about your sport and about coaching. Like literally, this is what kids say to adults all the time when we don't know how to do something, is like Google it or YouTube it. And like it's probably out there. You can learn so much on the internet right now. And then I guess the last thing I kind of want to say is like a bit of my story. So I never planned to be professionally employed in the sporting world. This was not my path. I took a biology and environmental science degree at Acadia. I worked for a couple of years in a chem lab, and then I worked for a hedge fund administration company. And then, I just did what I loved. I just followed my passion, and a position opened. It was created in Rugby, Nova Scotia, and it fit completely with what I love to do. And so it was a no-brainer for me. and I love my job and I love what I'm doing now. And I feel really lucky to have my job, but just keep following your passion, and it will take you to where you need to go.
I love that. Thank you, Emma. Thanks for sharing that. Savanah, I'll throw it over to you. So what piece of advice do you have for all the women on the call tonight? And what was the biggest piece you've received?
I have to say, Emma, you took all the great points. You did a really great job on that. Lisa, maybe you're feeling the same. But I will say maybe it'll just drive the point home a little bit with everybody on the call. But I have to completely agree that finding a coach mentor is the best thing that's happened to me coaching wise right now. Sometimes it's confusing and you don't really know what the right decisions are, or you haven't had enough experience to really know how certain players will react in certain different situations, regardless of all the boxes you're able to check. There's always those questions and those unique situations that come up. But having a coach mentor really helps. And that doesn't have to be anything formal. That could just like maybe you make a list of 3 past coaches that have really inspired you along the way, and then think about why, and then trying to employ those things into your coaching philosophy. But yeah, finding a coach mentor really helped. And also, we're talking about books. I just got this book actually from my mentor, which really is interesting. I've only read the first couple pages because I just got it last night, but it's called Coaching Better Every Season. And it's by Wade Gilbert, but it's more about the mental side of sports. But I'm super excited to read that. So just finding resources like that. And then, yeah, just putting yourself in situations to learn, and understanding that it's okay to not have the right answer for everything has really helped me. So yeah, thank you, Emma, for taking all such great points. But yeah, I would definitely have to agree.
Great. Thanks, Savanah. And yeah, anything by Wade Gilbert, like so good. So definitely echo that, and everyone should check out that book, but also just like Google his name and find his articles and YouTube and whatever else, like Emma said. If you just Google what you're interested in, you'll find something that will help you along the way. So Lisa, to wrap up our questions, so what is the biggest piece of advice you have received, and what advice you have for everyone on the call tonight?
You guys are freezing a little bit, so hopefully I won't freeze. Yeah, you guys nailed it. So Wade Gilbert is great. Yeah, he has some amazing programs that he's run, and the stats that he shows are awesome. So check him out. I agree with both Emma and Savanah. I think one, just like Emma, like I have a degree in marine biology. I worked at the Toronto Zoo. I've worked in online marketing downtown Toronto, and I'm now a national team coach. So, and I enjoy this job way more than anything else that I've done. So I think it's one of those things where, you don't know what life is going to throw at you. So you just got to, keep working with the opportunity, and also keep true to what you value and true to what you really love. And, things will happen. And in that vein, I think you make coaching your own. Like Savanah said, we don't have to have the answers for everything. And, our coaches don't know everything. They're not these like omnipotent creatures that have every answer to every question. And they have, so make sure you understand what you're really good at and what you particularly bring to coaching that is so special. And then surround yourselves with others and give your team options to fill in the gaps, so that you don't feel like you have to give it all, and then you'll feel a lot more confident with what you're bringing to the table, and then what you need to kind of to fill in the gaps. And I think that's really important for coaches. I think the biggest advice is just make sure you learn every day. I have to keep reminding myself that. And by learning also, I think it's also taking the time to actually reflect, because a lot of times learning goes in one ear and out the other if we don't have that time to reflect. And as coaches, we get really, really busy. And I know I feel the best about my coaching when I've actually had time to think, and when I've had time to reflect, and when I've had time to, so I think, and part of that learning every day is really trying to take the time to, and I should be listening to my own advice, to take the time to reflect, so that you do actually solidify learning every day. I think that's key. One thing that wasn't mentioned was the Atlantic Coaching Conference. So that's a really great way for coaches to network, to find mentors, and to also do some learning. And I think for me, the one thing I'd like to kind of leave with everybody is, don't limit yourself. We've been talking a lot about female leaders and female leadership, but the entire world needs female leaders, and everybody needs to see and grow up with leaders that are females. And so that's men's teams, women's teams, mixed teams, everybody. And so I think, don't just look at the women's teams at your club. Don't just look at look everywhere for opportunities for you to give your skill and your voice in coaching. 9% of the coaches at the Olympic Games are women. And that bar hasn't moved in a very, very long time. And I think a lot of it has to do with the fact that women don't see coaching as a career choice. And so, and the sport world doesn't see women as possible career coaches. So, the earlier you can get in and the more people see women in leadership roles, the better for everybody. But things are changing. So there is a chance here for everybody to be glass ceiling breakers and barrier breakers. Tonight, the first female NBA broadcast is going on, which is awesome. And, that's a big barrier, to have a female voice calling a game at one of the highest kind of levels of men's sport is pretty huge. So I think, there is stuff that we can do. And I think the biggest impact we can all make is making sure that everybody sees females as leaders right from the first day they walk on a field.
Awesome. I love that, Lisa. Thank you so much. And that's a great way to wrap up our questions. And I know we're close to 9:30, but there are quite a few questions in the chat box. So we might go a few minutes over, everyone. But please hang on, because we have some swag to give away, and we'd love for you to stay on so that hopefully your name can be called. Let me check what the first question was. Okay, so someone asked, what has been the most rewarding experience for you as a coach? So does anyone want to take a stab at that first?
I don't mind. I've been thinking about this because the question went up and I had a bit of time to think about it. So I guess this is going to sound a little cheesy, but that's probably why I'm on this call and chosen as a panelist. One of my favorite moment in coaching is when one of my athletes makes the decision that they would like to get into coaching, and then I get to mentor them through that process. That's kind of the stage that I'm at with my job, and also with my length of time in coaching. I'm now seeing my athletes transition into that coaching role, and I absolutely love it. It's a nice feeling for me because I would hope that, I helped create an environment that they felt attached to, and played a big impact in their life. And now they're trying to do the same for somebody else, and just that opportunity for them to pass it along. I'm like, I love it. It just gets me right in the heart. So that is definitely my favorite.
Great. I have to personally agree with that too, Emma. That's most rewarding for me as well. Lisa or Savanah, do you want to chime in?
I can go here. I'm noting who posted this question, and it's actually one of the athletes on the Dalhousie team. So I have a feeling she knows where I'm going with this, but the most rewarding experience for me coaching wise was we actually got our first win. I got my first win as a coach last weekend. And I'm bringing this up because I know it's been a really tough year for everybody in sport, especially. Well, in everything, but it has had an incredible impact on sports. But our team was able to like persevere throughout the whole year, and it was incredible to work with athletes who were so driven and kind of dedicated. We had the opportunity to practice every day, despite some sports didn't have that opportunity. So just at the end of the season, we were given I think it was a small token of the appreciation, small token of appreciation for all the efforts all year long. We were granted the ability to play a couple exhibition games, and we got a win this past weekend. So that was incredibly rewarding for me to see the look on the girls' faces when we got back into the locker room, and I think they were incredibly happy with that too. So just those little moments are the reason why I think a lot of us coach, and it's a really good feel-good moment. You love it as a player, and getting involved in coaching after you're finished, whether you get involved with coaching while you're still playing or you get involved afterwards, it's just another opportunity to have those feel-good moments and those like butterfly moments on the other side of it, but still within sport. So it's just an opportunity to continue that feeling for however long you want, really. But yeah, that was definitely my most rewarding coaching experience so far. So thank you for that question.
Awesome. Thanks, Savanah, and congrats on your first win. That's exciting. Lisa, do you have anything to add?
Yeah, I think for me as a coach, so, again, coaches have different skills, and as you grow as a coach, you'll find like you're either like a really good technical coach or a performance coach, or, you kind of can fill different roles. And so one of the things that really gets me going as a coach is kind of the performance of coaching, and like that mental performance of like the big competitions. And so one of the best moments I can kind of recall as a coach is working with an athlete for a long time who's a very talented athlete, but tends to have a lot of risk-taking behavior in big moments, and so doesn't tend to end up performing at the best of his ability on like the big day. And so we worked a long time on his resilience and his mental fortitude and his risk taking and all of these things. And he was doing a trials championship. So it was a very large regatta, but it was him and another athlete that were duking it out for a chance to represent Canada. And they were passing and so our competitions are more than one day. So this was a 4-day competition, and every day, each one of them was a little bit further ahead than the other. And they kind of went back and forth in the competition. And on the last day, he was behind, but not by very much. And he beat the other athlete in the first race, and they were pretty well tied. And the very last race of the regatta, they started, and I think there were 60 boats on the start line, and the other guy was in 5th place, and he was in like 25th. And just the way that he sailed that race, and the way that, kind of we had worked through everything, and he just, he put all the skills together, and just seeing an athlete kind of rise to the occasion and really put a performance together that you as a team have been working on for so long. It's really, really rewarding to kind of see an athlete put it all together in a very tough moment. And it was, those are the moments that I live for as a coach.
Yeah, that's awesome. Thank you so much, Lisa, for sharing that. And we have one more question, and I'll throw it out there because it's kind of a scenario question, and maybe some of you have experienced this, but have any of you ever played your sport with one of your current athletes that you're coaching? And did it change the way you conduct yourself around them during practices and games? If so, how?
Yeah. Yes, I have. So I can even think like right now. So when I play for my club, club rugby in Nova Scotia is senior women's in the summer. So any of our U18 athletes that play club rugby in the summer, they're playing at a senior women's level. So yeah, I play with them and against them in the summer. And I would say that does my personality change? No, my personality doesn't change. But I also know that as a coach, I'm a role model, whether I'm coaching or whether I'm playing or whether I'm at the grocery store. So like I hold myself to a pretty high standard in that regard, that I know that like people see me as their coach. And so I want to be that, like, part of coaching, part of the rewarding part of coaching for me is to be a role model for somebody else. So I would say that that is a part of my personality. But that certainly doesn't mean that if I'm playing against one of my athletes, I'm going to go easy on them because they're an athlete. Like, we still bring it on the field. And I think that that's a really fun and exciting thing about rugby, is that we have a lot of young female coaches in our sport. And so it happens quite a bit where we get to play with and against our athletes.
Yeah, Ringette's the same way. So I often play against the athletes I coach, and I feel the same way, and I conduct myself the same way, Emma. Like you said, they see you as a role model in every situation that you're in. So I think it's great that you're coming on here sharing your experience, but then also holding yourself to that high standard. And yeah, you should never let down when you're playing your athletes. I probably try a little bit harder when I'm playing my athletes because I don't want to get shown up. So Savanah or Lisa, do you have experience with that? So playing or competing with athletes that you're now coaching?
Yep, I can take that one next.
You want to go, Savanah?
Definitely. Are you good? Yeah, definitely, for sure. Growing up, not so much, but now that I've stepped into a more full-time coach position, I am coaching some of the girls that I used to play with. And again, like you guys said, Kirsty and Emma, you don't really have to change much as long as you are able to establish trust and respect as an athlete coach relationship. You can still be friends. You can still have those bonds of being past teammates, former teammates, and still play against them. And you don't have to change a whole lot. But I do think that it is important to have a mutual understanding between the athlete and the coaches when you are in those different settings, that sometimes it can be challenging if you're not honest about it, or if you're if you're not all on the same page, it can be interesting. But I think that so far it happens to most all coaches. Like, I think a lot of like we talked about earlier, a lot of coaches start right after they finish playing. So there's always that awkward period where it's like, I have to figure out how to conduct myself. But as I'm learning, you really don't have to change much, which is awesome. And that I think goes along with there not having to be a coach role and an athlete role. Like, you can be a player's coach. Like, I'm learning that. I think one of the things that maybe the girls will find kind of funny is I was scared to jump in drills and stuff at the beginning of the season because I didn't want to blur the lines between those relationships. But I think just if you develop that trust and respect from your players, you're able to do those things. And I remember when I deeply thought about it a couple weeks ago, and I was like, why am I doing this? to myself, because when I think back about some of my childhood coaches, my favorite ones were the players coaches that jumped in drills, that were doing all the things that the players were doing. So that was another thing that I learned this year, was that you really don't have to change anything. You can still do all the things, and it might make you better because of it. So interesting question. Love that.
Awesome. Thanks, Savanah. And I know, Lisa, you had something to say as well. So
Yeah, I mean, good point, Savanah, about jumping in the drills, because, you know, I every now and then I'll jump in and you know, kind of like do a demo or jump in and do a race or whatever. You know, it's fun, and B, it kind of changes it up. But I think what I was gonna say something very similar to what Savanah said, but just to reiterate, I think, and it's really, really important to be authentic. And so the fact that you were an athlete, I think is, you know, is a great thing to be bringing to the coaching. And this may be something that, you know, even if you weren't an athlete with the current athletes, if you're very similar in age, and we did kind of talk about this, is that it's that line that needs to be drawn. And I think the biggest thing with coaching is to make sure that you kind of get your values, your beliefs, you know, your understanding, all of that out at the very beginning, so that there is that kind of trust, vulnerability, and that everybody can be authentic, so that you don't have to try and be, you know, the boss if you're the coach, if you're, you know, like, so that you can show a little bit of vulnerability as the coach, but still be a leader within the team. And so I think that that's really important, is to make sure that that you have that set at the very beginning, so that there is an understanding that, you know, I'm going to be playing with you guys sometimes, and sometimes I'm going to be in this role, and I'm going to steal something from a rugby coach, funnily enough, Jack. And so one of the things that they do with their team is, and this is also the line between, you know, being friends, but also having the respect and kind of like that leadership role of the coach when you're into practice or game day or whatever. And so they have a milling around period, and then as soon as the music stops, they're into kind of game face mode, right? So just having that understanding that everybody understands that, you know, this is what we do when the music's on. We can kind of, you know, do whatever, but as soon as the music's off, you know, I'm out of the friend zone and I'm into the coaching role. And so I think that those kind of things might help somebody who's in that zone where they need a little bit of extra kind of shift to be able to put on the different hats. So.
great. Thank you, Lisa. And thank you again, Emma, Savanah, Lisa, for coming on here tonight. We really appreciate you staying a little longer than an hour to share your wisdom, experience, and expertise with us. I'm just going to share my screen again so we can wrap up. So thank you, everyone, for joining us, and thank you again to the panelists. It was an awesome session. I'm very passionate about athlete to coach transition, and I think we had a great panel on here tonight to talk about it and educate us. So I'd love to hear from everyone on the call tonight, some takeaways that you have. So again, we'll use the annotate function. And if you could just type away some things that you've learned, and if you don't know how to use the annotate function, just throw it in the chat box. And while you're doing that, we'll get Janice to announce the winners of the swag.
Awesome. So Sophie, I apologize if any of these are pronounced wrong, by the way. Sophie Inkpen, Sydney Good, Autumn Moores, and Madeline McDonald. Either send me a direct message, or I will pop my email address into the chat and just send me an email. We've got a Women and Girls Task Force coffee mug, which conveniently a lot of coaches need for you. So if you want to just send me an email or send me a message, we'll get you connected and get that to you.
Awesome. Thanks, Janice. And I will be mindful of time, so we'll move on, but I'd love to hear some takeaways, and I'm seeing some messages in the chat box. So definitely let us know what you've learned, and even like what you'd like to learn moving forward. So our next session is on April 14th. It is our female leadership series, and our next coaching series our next one will be in May. But what we have upcoming is the Atlantic Coaches Conference, which we encourage all of you to attend. So that is on April 23rd and 24th. Usually it is held in person, but we will be putting everything online in a virtual setting this year. So it will be a bit condensed, but there will still be a lot of presenters. We actually have people from all over the world who are going to be presenting at this conference. So we encourage you to attend. And the early bird price ends a week from today on March 31st. So it's only $40 to attend this conference, but after March 31st, it goes up to $50. So definitely ensure that you register as soon as possible. Some of the female leaders that will be presenting include Cindy Tai, who was on the session last month. And then we also have Kenneth, who was the national team coach for Team Canada Soccer. He will be our keynote. So there's a lot of great people to learn from, and we encourage you to register for this conference. Other coaching opportunities is our VIP program. And actually, by becoming a VIP coach, you'll get the Atlantic Coaches Conference for free. So I definitely encourage that you apply for this program. Essentially, the VIP program is a coach recognition program. We want to recognize you guys as community coaches and putting all your time and effort into your community. So to apply for this program, it's completely free. You can go to supportforsport.ca/VIP. There's a few requirements that you have to meet to become a VIP coach. But once you are a VIP coach, you'll be part of a network of coaches. You'll be able to take part in professional development. You'll receive many perks like an Under Armour kit. And I know Emma's repping her shirt from VIP tonight. So it's a great program and a great way to connect with other coaches from other sports. So definitely apply for this program. Again, completely free, and you get so many perks. So definitely apply. The last opportunity I want to bring up is coach mentorship, and this directly applies to a lot of what was said tonight. I know all three of the panelists mentioned that you should look for a mentor, and this program does exactly that. Anyone can apply. We will do a sport specific or a multi-sport mentorship, and a cool thing about this is we try to keep our female coaches together. So if you're a new female coach or you're an athlete looking to transition into coaching, definitely apply for this program. What happens is we pair a mentee with an experienced mentor coach. Emma is actually a mentor in this program, and you'll be paired with them for a year, and you'll meet monthly. You'll go through professional development, you'll go through mentorship training, and it's a great way to develop your coaching skills and then have someone to confide in when you do meet any challenges throughout your coaching career. And please email me if you have any questions about that. I can throw my email in the chat box. But that's it for tonight. Thank you so much for joining us, and keep up all the amazing inspirational work you guys are doing as female leaders. And we hope to see you in April. Thank you.
Thanks, Kirsty.
Thanks.